Ladies and gentlemen, can I call you to order, please? We're moving on to our second presentation of the week. Some of you may have noticed what looks like wire fencing on the left. That's certainly the question I asked myself when I came in this morning. The film you're about to see actually demonstrates the real significance of that product and the context of how we're driving Manchester forward. So let's have a short film.
Graphene is the thinnest possible material you can obtain. It's only 1 atom thick, and it is also the most mechanically strong, the most conductive, one of the most transparent materials, the most elastic, and so on and so on. The only criteria for the selection of the topic is that we never get bored. It would be always interesting. We just ask ourselves how thin can be a material, and can you make a transistor out of metal? And then we just tried it on graphite. It did work up to some extent, and then we were pushing this into the direction of getting the thinnest possible material in the world. And it's quite a wonder material. It's a great fun to work with it, because some people love to talk about it as a philosopher's stone. Generally, it takes really a long time from the discovery of a new material to the applications. Here we have something which 6 years ago didn't exist at all, and already next year we know that Samsung is planning to release their first mobile phones with screens made of graphene.
For those of you who are privileged, I think, to be participants in the event we had in the Majestic earlier, I think for me there were 3 things that came out from that. One is the sort of global marketplace is becoming increasingly complex and dynamic, posing challenges which frankly were unthinkable a decade ago. Also, the cities that are going to really drive forward and actually promote growth, both in terms of employment or investment, are ones that fundamentally are going to be ones which place science and innovation at the heart of their agenda, and also cities which actually respond to the challenges of the funding climate we're all going to live in, and actually start to address new investment models in order to be able to maintain that growth going forward. Our presentation today from 2 principal participants, Mike Emmerich, who's Chief Exec at the Manchester New Economy, Sarah Whitney from CBRE, who's worked very closely with us on our investment model and pioneering work, are going to give you a little bit a taster for some of the issues which that sort of approach involves. So, Mike.
Thanks very much, Howard. Twice today you've heard about graphene. And why at a conference like this have we taken the opportunity to talk twice about what is actually still a technology that's sitting on the bench in Manchester, not even any products yet? Well, the answer is because it in a way is a metaphor for a lot of what is going on in the city at the moment and what's going to be going on in the city in the period ahead. I think graphene is important in 2 senses. One, it's a symbol of something that I think we need as a city to remember is ours and we are reclaiming, which is global leadership in science and technology. Manchester has always been at the forefront of that, and you've heard a lot already, and you'll hear more through the rest of the week about how Manchester is leading in science and technology. With these 2 Nobel Prize winners, we've got more than Oxford, Cambridge or London. So Manchester's leading, and that enables us to reconnect with some of the stories that we all know about Manchester, which is what Manchester does today, the rest of the world does tomorrow. A very old phrase, but one which is quite literally true again with what these guys are doing with graphene. So it's about building the reality of the image of what the city is about back to where I think we all know it we all know it belongs. And of course, as Howard said, it's about jobs and growth and everything that comes with that. But perhaps, in a second sense, the reason why we've taken so much time to talk about graphene is because innovations like that don't come out of thin air. They come out of strong leadership in an institution like the University of Manchester, under Alan Gilbert, and now under Nancy Rothwell. We've seen really, really world-class leadership driving investment decisions, taking tough decisions to put money into things that matter and chasing it through until it delivers results. That's what's delivered graphene. And actually, it's what's been going on in the city already for a generation across the whole urban development field. And I think most importantly of all, it's what's characterising the way we're approaching economic development and urban regeneration. You heard this morning about the Manchester family and how we've worked to make sure that as the public sector recession in the British state bites, it doesn't diminish our capacity to grow. In fact, the same innovative approach that we've seen in the university investing in graphene has seen us consolidate our resources, we were hearing this morning, into centres of excellence that will make sure that we are as able as ever we were to support you in the private sector in delivering that jobs and growth. But above all, I think, this fiscal crisis that the state has got is something that is an opportunity for innovative cities, and above all, I think, for our city, to reposition its offering vis the market. We know in a lot of cities they're cutting back on economic development. They're getting rid of their capacity, even as local enterprise partnerships are being created. Our approach is different, because what we did was to look at the city, to look at our proposition and ask some hard questions of ourselves. And facing the reality of a lack of finance for gap funding, the question is, do we start to scale back our ambitions, or do we start to change the model? And the answer for us is very, very decisively that we have to change the model. And just as we've changed the way we've organised the family, what we've done is to pioneer a very different approach to how we do economic development projects, which is to move away from a gap funding approach and to move to one based on investment. And that underpinned our regional growth fund bid that went in a few weeks ago, and it very much underpins the work that we've been doing with Sarah and her colleagues at CBRE across Greater Manchester in taking the initial investment of ERDF money into Jessica and then leveraging that and bidding to run the programme in what's now the Evergreen Fund. And so I think Sarah's going to say a little bit more, but the key message I wanted to communicate to you is that the linkage between graphene and what Sarah's going to talk about is all about our city rediscovering in every aspect of what it does the need for innovation and for that innovation to drive growth and prosperity. So I'll hand over to Sarah to say a little bit more about Evergreen.
Right, well, we're going to go from the sublime to the ridiculous, and you haven't just walked into a branch of foods. You've heard about graphene, and I'm going to talk about toothpaste. Toothpaste is a subject I'm not particularly fond of, but rather than just do a rather dry, sterile presentation about what Evergreen is, I thought I'd bring you to life with a true story that's going to show you the power and the reach of this fund. So my presentation is about a tube of toothpaste. In actual fact, it's about 1 million tubes of toothpaste that used to be produced every day by the Colgate-Palmolive factory in Salford. And they didn't just produce toothpaste. Whoops, it's not working. There we go. They didn't just produce toothpaste, they produced lipstick and cans of shaving foam and all the rest of it. In fact, if you walk around this rather iconic building, you can still smell toothpaste, you can still smell the shaving foam, and you can imagine very clearly the lines that used to work there. Now, very sadly, in 2007, it became uneconomical for Colgate-Palmolive to carry on making toothpaste at this factory, and they decided that they were going to relocate their production to Poland. So they closed down the production lines. They sold a lot of the plant and machinery, believe it or not, on eBay, which I think is a wonderful story. The idea that people are bidding for this stuff on eBay is amazing. They sold it down, and in 2008, the lights in the factory went out. And this is a factory that, at its heyday, employed over 1,000 people in Salford. Lights went out, and all signs of economic activity died. And you can imagine this was on the shoulder of the credit crisis, the recession was looming, but there were 3 white knights who careered Over the Horizon and came to Salford, and they were Nickel, Abstract and Carlisle, who together formed a partnership to buy this really beautiful 1930s factory. They formed a partnership to buy it, and they came up with a fantastic, really tremendous scheme, which is going to involve building around 400,000 square feet of retail, leisure and office space, up to 250 new residential units, one, possibly two hotels, and it's going to create well over 3,000 jobs. I mean, it's a real job creating investment. The difficulty is that there wasn't enough debt around to fully fund the scheme, and the scheme was sitting there almost viable but not quite there. And that's when Evergreen comes into play, because what Evergreen is going to do, I should say that this is one of the projects that Evergreen is looking at investing, and what Evergreen could potentially do is put enough mezzanine debt into this project to make it viable. And this is a highly unusual project. It's got 18 local authority partners all looking at investing in it, coming into this partnership on an equal terms basis. It's got a firm of professional fund managers managing the fund on behalf of those local authorities. And although we're only starting off with a small amount of seed funding, we're starting with £30 million, which will then be matched by local authorities and developers, we've brought together a panel of other investors, including local authority pension funds, including Barclays Bank, and there are one or two other in the wings that we're still talking to create a fund which could have a financing reach of nearly £500 million. And that makes a huge difference in the context of the Manchester economy. It's an enormous difference. And that fund means that properties like this is the iconic factory I was talking to you about, that fund means that properties like this will be turned into amazing developments like this, which are right at the heart of our communities. This is a funky, jazzy, it's perfectly pitched. I'm not sure if Nickel Abstract team are here, so I might just tone it down because I wouldn't hear this. But it's perfectly pitched, it's a great adjunct to Media City, and this is something that might not happen were it not for something like the Evergreen Fund. It doesn't stop here, so Howard and his team are incredibly creative, and they're looking at tax increment financing, they're looking at the Regional Growth Fund bid, which went in, Mike and Mr Howard have already talked about, but with a number of other funding initiatives coming out of government, and they're looking at how they can leverage that with private sector money to get away from the culture of gap financing to make schemes like this a reality. So Howard, back to you.
If our regional growth fund bid is successful, which we all hope it will be, what that will give us is the additional capacity for equity investment. So far, the Evergreen Fund is largely focused on debt finance, mezzanine finance. With the added catalytic impact of equity investments, we're going to be able to significantly increase the financing reach of that fund. And we're keeping our fingers crossed to hope that we get a positive response from government in a couple of weeks' time. We also know that on the 12th of April, they will launch round 2 of the Regional Growth Fund. And that's where I think business generally in Greater Manchester can start to help themselves and start to help us. Because what we now need increasingly is more projects which are capable of being brought forward quickly, projects which are going to attract the right kind of finance. By doing that, we're not only helping yourselves, we're also helping Manchester and Greater Manchester in driving ourselves forward. Hope you found that an interesting perspective.